November 9th, 2021. It's 6:30 p.m. Standard Time, which means it's dark outside. And let the record show the counselors are here except for Counselor Morton, who previously let us know that she was going to be gone, and so she's excused. Counselors, you have the minutes of the meeting on October 26th in your packet. Do they meet with your approval?
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And opposed. Motion carries. Thank you very much. We're going to go to visitor comment, and I'm going to have Billy Ray. I'm blowing the name here. Wisenet. Thank you. Excuse me for.
I've been called a lot.
Well, excuse me for my clumsiness. Good evening and welcome to City Council.
Thank you very much, and I appreciate the opportunity to be here on behalf of the American Legion Post 33. And I'm here to say thank you to the city and to say thank you to Cliff Nash and to Sean Irwin for their help in helping us continue our Veteran of the Month program. We just resumed that this past month, and it's been very rewarding for the families. It's been very rewarding for the veterans in this area to be able to do this, and we're very much appreciative of the help that you've given us. And I've got 3 certificates of appreciation, one for the city, one for Mr. Irwin, and then one for Mr. Nash. And I'd like to either leave these here or give them to you. I can
come out.
It seems a little, but the main thing is it's heartfelt, and we do appreciate it.
Well, thank you so much for what you folks do and for starting this program. I had a chance to go down and thank you for all the things that you've done.
I think it's good for the city.
I think it is. Well, thank you very much on behalf of all of us for this recognition, and thank you for being part of our community.
It's a pleasure. And I'd like to say, extend the invitation to anyone with a deceased veteran that would like to honor their veteran. Please contact me, and we'll get that done. We're trying for the second Saturday of every month, and this is with the help of the museum. They've been very gracious in all of this. And if I've missed saying thank you to anyone, I'm very sorry, but I want you to know again how much we appreciate it.
Well, thank you so much, and we'll make sure we get these to the right people.
I have a question. Is your post 33, is that Polk County or is that?
It's Independence. It's
Independence,
specifically-
strictly Independence. Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Billy.
National Award, you mean there's American Legion and Independence, and I say, yeah.
There it is.
Yeah.
Thank you.
My dad's actually a part of it.
Okay, thank you so much. Okay, we're going to move into a presentation this evening on the Mid-Willamette Valley Homeless Alliance, of which we are part of. I'm going to turn it over to Counselor Kaur, who serves on the board, to make an introduction of our speaker, and then we'll go from there. Please, Counselor Kaur.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll be brief. Jan Calvin is here to give us an update on what's going on with the Homeless Alliance. We meet once a month, and to say we have a chock-full agenda every month would be an understatement. It is amazing the amount of work the 3 people who support the Alliance do. I say support, but really you do all the work. All we do is review what you do and say yes. They've done an amazing amount of work. They've been able to secure a $3.7 million grant to help end youth homelessness in Marion and Polk counties. And myself, a couple of counselors from Monmouth, a counselor from Dallas, are going to do everything we can, along with Commissioner Gordon, to get our chunk of that money so we could do something here in our county. Thanks so much.
Well, thank you very much for making the time for me to give you an update on a program as, yes, you are very much a part of, I would say founding members of. But there's so much that moves us along, and so we appreciate the opportunity to bring you an update today. Does this little magic button work for me?
The little arrow on the right.
Little arrow on the right. Okay.
Hey, it worked.
Okay. Okay, I can be taught. As Councilor Kaur mentioned, my name is Jan Calvin. I am one of the staff contractors who supports the Homeless Alliance. And before we really get started on telling you about the Alliance and the latest update on that, I wanted to talk a little bit about who is homeless when we talk about community and how this comes to be a reality for people who likely never thought that it would be. And so when we look at data, and frequent question is, how many people are homeless, right? How many people are homeless? And it can be counted many different ways. Part of it is the definition of homelessness, okay? But when we look at something we call a coordinated entry system, that is a way to count and also assess the conditions of people who are homeless in our two-county region. So the data that's on the screen today is a quick snapshot that we pulled up from last year, and we've been using, and we will update this as we move forward, but about 1,200 people known to be homeless in Marion and Polk region. And I would say we are closer to 1,400 now. It continues to rise. And then there's a terminology called chronically homeless. And HUD defines that as somebody who truly is homeless, say, for more than a year or for multiple times over the years. We see many people who are chronically homeless who've been homeless for 5 years, 7 years, 12 years. It's amazing. And those can be, singles is up there, 815 on the count that was done. But chronically homeless is devastating in our region, particularly in the Mid-Willamette Valley. When we look at all of Oregon and the nation, you see up there 27% of people who are homeless are chronically homeless in the nation. But in our region, it's 43% of the people who are homeless are chronically homeless. And so when we look at that, the individuals who are homeless, that's more than 50% of individuals are chronically homeless. So this 43% is because families are also chronically homeless. When we look at young people, the reports that up here go through the Department of Education, and school age youth, this count from last year was over 1,900 school age youth were identified as homeless. Well, I just told you that there was 1,200 to 1,400 homeless individuals. How can there be 1,900 homeless youth? Again, it's the definition. So when schools count people who are homeless, they can be doubled up, they can actually be in shelter, or they can be literally homeless on the streets. And the Department of Education federally has this different definition because there's a funding stream that can support those folks, and that's fantastic. But you'll see that the counts move all across North Marion, Polk County, Salem-Keizer, and we are seeing those go up. One of the things that we learned that in Falls City, where you've got 43 on this particular year who are homeless, that's 43 in Falls City. That means 1 in 4 students in the Falls City district are homeless. It's amazing. So when we think who's homeless and how does homelessness happen, usually we tell this great story that it's a true story that actually came off of a social media Facebook post for somebody who works with folks in the streets. And it just shows a series, and because of time, and I want to be conscious of your time and your work here, I won't go into the depth of the story, but it really is a story about a young person who was a parent, and just a series of things, heat bills, evictions, bad credit rating because of the eviction, how do you get in? I mean, it's just a snowball. It's just tumbling, and how do you get out of that when one thing can just spark it?
Jan, can you pull your mic down a little bit so we can hear you a little bit better?
I don't know, can I?
Our masks muffle us already, but.
All right, thank you.
There you go.
Thanks for asking.
Thank you.
Okay, great. So when we look at why people are homeless, sure, you can be homeless, obviously, the poverty, there's a financial issue around that. And the lack of affordable housing that we see across the region. But also for women, domestic violence is the number one reason that women are homeless. And we have nearly a 50-50 of gender balance of homeless folks. Mental illness and substance abuse are comorbidity factors that either were there that helped cause the homelessness or are manifested because of the homelessness. So people who are homeless do have multiple needs, but they're also people who are young, people who are old. We just heard veterans. Yeah, there is a big push to house veterans, and we have many more resources for veterans than we do others, but still not enough. So looking at who is homeless, it's very complex, and our job as an alliance, and you all as partners to the alliance, is to meet those complex needs all across the two-county region. So first, in thinking about who is homeless, that helps us in our context of moving on to our mission. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about the alliance, the mission, the structure, the goals, and our plan. And so if you've got questions, pipe up as you go, or at the end is just fine. All right. So the mission here, we're very strong in evidence-based work. Okay? So we put that right up front in the mission. And then looking at ultimately meeting those unique needs, guiding everybody towards stable housing, more stable housing, but looking at the full range of everyone, young and old, across the two-county region who are both homeless or at risk of homelessness. So people typically think, okay, you're going to support those people we see on the streets. There's also a tremendous number of invisible homeless, and there's people who are just at the edge or the precipice or risk of being homeless. So it's a prevention as well as an intervention and response system. Quick caution, quick note about our symbols and meanings. This is a fairly new logo. We actually had loaned staff time from a public information officer with the city of Salem that helped put all of this together, and it was really a fun process. But looking at the whole idea of this teamwork and unity that brings the two-county region together is why these symbols are what they are. So when we looked at the dream, the Mid-Willamette Valley Homeless Alliance is actually what's called a continuum of care. And HUD created the Continuum of Care program in 1994, and the whole purpose of the Continuum of Care program is to promote that community-wide commitment to addressing homelessness. So the Alliance has that charge, and within it, there's two main purposes. One is all of the community-wide planning with whatever data, insights, and information we can pull together to do our best work. And the second is we coordinate a single community application for federal dollars. That's about, it's a little less than 1.5 million. And when we took a look at all of the funds that are going into supporting and addressing homeless issues, across the two-county region, there's over 100 million going into it. So this one funding stream, as important as $1.5 million is only a drop in all of the resources that we're blending together to try to address this issue. So real quick history on our Continuum of Care, or COC. It's known as the Oregon 504, Salem, Marion, Polk County Continuum of Care. HUD gives us that lovely name, so we preferred the Mid-Willamette Valley Homeless Alliance. As I said, the program was launched in '94, and Marion and Polk County had a Continuum of Care up until 2011. But then the federal government had kind of a 2.0 realization in Continuum of Care, and they really upped the ante and said every Continuum of Care needs to do this coordinated entry process, vetting and assessing every person, and put them on a individual by name list. Okay? It's an important approach, and it works, but there wasn't any funding. The other thing they said is you have to have a homeless management information system, a database that meets all these standards. Great idea, but there wasn't any infrastructure funding. So the two-county region, the providers who were meeting together said, what can we do? And at the time, there was a 26-county balance of state Continuum of Care, small community across Oregon. And they said, well, you can join that one. So for a number of years, Marion and Polk was in what was called the ROC, the Rural Oregon Continuum of Care. But then in 2017, 2018, and Tom was a part of this process, pulling together the vision of what if we had a two-county continuum of care again. Okay? And there were lots of great reasons. So in the short version is here we are. So we did that, and it was incredible work. I started joining the process at that time, and looking at the continuum of care responsibilities around this regional planning work, the data collection, as I said, the HMIS, Homeless Management Information System. There's thousands of people in that database now, and it's a shared database amongst a number of providers, more than 24 providers. And then looking at how do we maximize all those resources. So the $100+ million of effort, time, and energy, not to count the community responses that come to bear, whether it be a faith-based response, personal response, all these resources, and how do we prioritize the work and get ahead of this problem. So that's what our charge is. This is our organizational structure. I sent this with a handout, might be a little bit easier to read there. But one thing I want to point out is that the Alliance Board, as you all are members of that, there's 21 members. And the Executive City Committee off to the right, as you would expect, and this thing called an Appeals Committee, that's because of our annual RFP process. So if there's a problem with that, we've got a process to vet that. And then underneath that, you'll see a point in time count and a performance and evaluation committee. Those are standing committees. You've probably heard of point in time count. The performance and evaluation committee is looking to evaluate not just individual programs, but their job is to evaluate how does the entire community system work. So how many people are homeless? How long do they stay homeless? Do they return to homelessness after they've been housed? So there's a whole series of performance measures that they're managing. On the left side, at the top, you'll see this ORS 190 entity. ORS, Oregon Revised Statutes, allowed the governmental entities, 8 of which are on the board, to form a legal entity with the Alliance, which is really just a collaboration. The Alliance now has a legal branch that can sign all of its contracts and do that sort of work and hire or contract with staff. So you'll see the staff listed there. And Councilor Corr mentioned that there were 3, and what just added last week is now there's 4. Mm-hmm. So we're really pleased to be able to bring on Lisa Trowernick as our 4th person, and that was because of the grant that she mentioned, the $3.7 million, so to do additional planning around youth work. Down the left side, you'll see the Youth Action Board. That was a new addition in the last year. And then the HMIS, that's our database group, the Coordinated Entry Group, and then all the subcommittees that go under that. So when Councilor Corr says we meet once a month, that's the group at the top. All these other groups also meet once a month or more often. So it's a very robust and dynamic system, if you will. And this doesn't even mention all the individual entities. The large box in the middle, though, is where we say that's really where lots of work gets done, because you'll see examples of the entities that are there. More than 60 different agencies, 100 people. We have a meeting next week, and I expect there'll be about 60 people. We do it all on Zoom now. But that's where the bulk of the work gets done around policy, systems change, how do we get ahead of the game. So, yes.
How many of these, are all these people volunteers, or is there paid positions?
So the staff contractors are paid under the Alliance rubric, and in fact, every voting member of the Alliance board makes a financial contribution. So obviously City of Independence does that, along with others, and then the grant funds have admin costs in them that allow for the contracting. When we look at all the rest of it, it's people, for the most part, who it's their job to work in this issue. Okay? So we do have probably, I would say, I can think of about 20 people who are strictly just volunteers. They're citizens, they're passionate about the issue. But we have church pastors, we have people from nonprofit, we have people from government groups.
Thank you.
Thank you. So that's our structure. You see the Alliance board there. Our newest board member, we just changed our charter so that Pacific Source Community Solutions just joined our board. Full range of folks. And then one of the most recent things we also did is expanded from one member who represents an either current or lived experience in homelessness. And we've now added 2 more, so there'll be 3 people with current or recent lived experience in homelessness will be a part of the board, and really excited about that. So we have 9 goals, okay? And when we looked at putting together our strategic plan for the first time a year and a half ago, these goals were built off of the predecessor work of an organization called the the Mid-Valley Homeless Initiative, okay? And that was a precursor that set up all the work to say, should we be a COC? But what came in when we did these goals is the homeless services system, all about being the COC and setting it up so that it has longevity, it has metrics, it has measures, all of those, that robust infrastructure that wasn't there back in the 90s and early 2000s. You can see that the strategic plan also calls for, obviously, affordable housing, emergency shelters, all of those physical services that are so very important to address the issue. We just started a new health and safety committee, and so we've got folks from both healthcare world, as I said, Pacific Source just joined our board. We've got other providers, and then people who are servicing folks who are directly homeless, and it's kind of the melding of these 2 worlds, that one has a certain expertise, didn't know how to reach the population, one has the population, didn't know how to get the services. So we're super excited to see what systems and practical changes can come out of this new, I think we've got about 18 people on this committee. Looking at both the prevention world, and then we've got a whole list of ways to deal with strategies for specific populations. Remember when we started and I said we're looking at complex needs from a diversity of community folks, and we need very specific approaches that work best for them, whether they're young people, whether they're veterans, seniors, farm workers, etc. And then finally, the community engagement work, because really, as you say, whether it's a volunteer, you're fortunate enough to be paid to work on an issue as important as this, or whether or not you do it out of some other passions that don't give you financial rewards. There is no way to end or even prevent homelessness on the scale that we're talking about if we don't fully engage all sectors of our community. So real quick on our 9 goals, and then we also have strategies. It's not just what you do, but it's how you do that work. So when we think about that community input, that is job 1. Okay? If some way we are not locally connected to the community and being relevant to what they see happening, we see happening, we can't get anywhere. And Mayor McCardle was, just mentioning to me, things are changing, right? You're seeing things differently, and you have to stay relevant, and you have to have dialogue with folks. So again, I appreciate the conversation here, and any other way that we can participate in supporting the City of Independence. So the full range of stakeholders is important to the work we're doing. You saw the whole gambit in our organizational structure. We're always looking for additional partners and ways to align the work that people are already doing so that it can benefit this mission. When we look at advocating the prioritization for services, as I mentioned, that chronically homeless population is job number 1 for us. But closely behind that is young people. Okay? In our coordinated entry system, those thousands of folks, surveying those people when we do the assessment of what their needs and backgrounds and issues are, 70% of them say that they experienced homelessness when they were a young person. The cycle is clear. We have way too many young people who are experiencing homelessness early in their life. So with this new grant, it's called a homeless youth demonstration project, bringing in that 3.7 million is going to be really exciting as a community-wide plan. We have 6 months to finish up a plan and then start RFPing those dollars out into community. And in our needs assessment that we do every year, in the youth area, what we know is there's only one 10-bed youth shelter in our 2-county region in Salem. We obviously don't have anything here in Polk County, and you still have the need. And so whether it's more shelters and more interventions and direct services, things like host homes, we're really excited to see what we can get out into community. What's also clear is just as COVID has affected disproportionately the BIPOC communities, homelessness also does that. Right? So it just manifests the racial inequities that we have within our communities. So looking at how do we address uniquely the outreach factors and how do we bring diverse voices in to advise us in which way we need to move systems and change so that we can address this more equitably. Yes.
Jan, I'm sorry to interrupt. So in my day job, I work for DHS over at the Polk County branch of child welfare. And we just got a brand new program director, came over to us from Marion County. And in literally her first week with us, we had an unhoused individual who spent his morning napping in our lobby, which was fine, gave him coffee, snacks. She was actually really appalled to find out that in Polk County, in Marion County, she said, I could pick up a phone, I could call UGM, I could call Arches, we could have him squared away. She was pretty appalled to find out that there was nothing that she could do beyond calling 211, and we have self-sufficiency right upstairs to assist this gentleman in finding some shelter. Do we have any immediate plans, for Polk County? Because, it's been an aching gap in Polk County regarding our unhoused population. So
Right.
I had a mom literally in tears at my desk today saying, why can't you expedite my housing? I can't have my son back until I can provide safe, secure, permanent shelter for him. Why can't they push it through? So, and I know that's a huge question. I'm not expecting a fix from you. Do we have things on the burners? Do we have things that we're working on? To actually start addressing the issues in Polk County? Because what I encounter when I talk to folks out in the public is often but if you build it, they will come sort of a mentality, which is for me heartbreaking. And so they want to continue just to shuffle them off to Marion County.
Jan, I can answer a little bit of that, and I'll let you finish up. Under Commissioner Gordon's leadership, things are going to change in Polk County. He's very adamant about making sure we have resources available here. We don't want our homeless to go to Marion County. We want to take care of the people who live in this community here.
Exactly, yeah.
And there are several offshoots from the Homeless Alliance. That's one meeting a month. That's morphed into 4 meetings a month now. There's a counselors group that's working on some stuff. There's a counselors group plus Polk County Family Services that's working on some stuff. And then Commissioner Gordon has formed his own committee, which I think all of those groups are going to morph under Commissioner Gordon's committee with his leadership. But yeah, we're looking at some very creative things. I won't say exactly what they are yet because we're working on that with Tom through the ARPA funds and everything. But between the ARPA funds and the $3.7 million, we are working on trying to get some resources, not only in Polk County, but in Independence, Monmouth.
Excellent. Okay. Thank you for that. And thank you for that.
And that is the answer. It
Right.
comes from the community.
Right.
And so when we think about, there are, more numbers in Salem and Kaiser, but there's, in my heart, no more need than anywhere else.
Right.
Need is everywhere. And so when we look at what is it we can do as a coalition to make sure that things are covered all
Right.
across the geographic area, it comes with stimulating those conversations locally.
Can I ask a question? I was looking at the Polk County schools for Central, because independent, so I'm just focused on Central. Can you give us a breakdown of who is in foster care, who is doubling up, and who is actually houseless? Is there a breakdown of that you could?
Yeah, actually, it's available on the Oregon Department of Education website. And McKinney-Vento is the key name. So you have McKinney-Vento liaisons in every school district that report those numbers and have the detail. But if you don't find what you need, I can certainly dig it up as well. But that's where we look to get the latest, and then talk to the folks at Oregon Department of Ed.
And also that number 53, I had a meeting with Superintendent Cabista this afternoon. That number is the number of students who identify as homeless. There's about 20 to 25 that don't identify as homeless, but are by definition homeless. So you're always going to have that segment that refuses to identify for whatever reason they choose not to, that you still have to provide for, regardless of whether or not they're identified.
What is the definition of homeless?
So in the Department of Ed, they look at it from a standpoint of that they are not in a permanent long-term situation. So when we say they're doubled up, it doesn't mean that they are a multi-generational household that wants to live that way, right? It means it's a temporary situation. They might be staying with a friend for 2 weeks, and then they're staying somewhere else, whether you call that couch surfing or doubled up. So I can get you the language of the definitions of it, but that's one area.
I think
right?
that's important, just because I'm floored that 1 in 4 kids in Falls City is considered homeless. So are you considered homeless if you live with your grandparents?
No.
Are you considered homeless if you live at a friend's house?
If you're a foster child, I think you do. If your grandparent is the foster child or foster parent, then you're considered homeless, right? If it's a family member.
Not my understanding. No, foster care is
No,
not
because
considered
that's a
homeless
long-term
definition. Yeah.
placement, specifically a placement to prevent just that situation.
Right.
But then short-term foster care would be? Because I thought foster care
Our goal
was
is never
considered.
short-term. I mean,
Well, yeah.
if you're entering the foster care system, there are reasons. So, I mean,
Right, so
and
foster
family
care doesn't-
placements
wouldn't be
are
counted.
generally preferred if possible.
I'm floored at the 1 in 4 in homeless in Falls City. That's why I'm just like, if we're going to be throwing out the word homeless, and then are we also defining the at risk of homeless? Are we including those people in this number?
No.
Then what does that mean at the risk of homelessness when we study that?
Usually we're talking about families who are, well, before pandemic and eviction protections. That's what we're looking at, is really those folks who are on the edge of one paycheck, and they've come for assistance, and they are looking for help right now in order to stay housed. So it's that need-based.
So they have to be seeking help to be at the risk of homelessness.
That's the
Correct.
best we can identify, yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
There's also in the youth area, there's hotel motel stays are considered homeless, living in cars.
So can someone be considered homeless in multiple categories and be, like, so if I was a kid and I was couch surfing, I'm homeless there. And if next time I'm in hotels, would I be counted twice?
No, you would not be counted twice.
Remember, she said by name, so we're
Yeah.
Right, the list by name, and I guess that's where that becomes increasingly important.
Yeah,
So that
so that you
that
don't
those are
double count.
individually identified, so they're not in multiple categories.
Great.
Sounds like Falls City needs some help. I'm really saddened by that.
Which is why we're very grateful for Commissioner Gordon, who has deep roots in Falls City.
Indeed. So you've already seen and raised your own awareness tonight, but when we look at the proven approaches, one of those is the voices of people who are experiencing this. So as much as you can learn from people who are, whether they call themselves homeless or at risk of, or the label isn't all that important, it's realizing that this local data and knowing what's happening in your own community is critical. So this by name list and this coordinated entry system, what we've done recently is expand that fourfold so that we now have mobile assessors who will pick up the phone, come on out. We'll come and talk to that gentleman in the lobby. You know, he may not be ready to share a whole lot of information,
Right.
but that'll take time. We also have outreach staff who, in addition to the assessors, will build that relationship with people. And we probably have 35 of those.
So
across our
how,
region.
in Polk County, I'm sorry, this is kind of my day life. So how would I, in the future, in a similar situation, reach one of the mobile assessors?
Call the Arches folks.
Okay, so call the Arches folks over in Marion County?
They have the mobile assessors.
Okay.
And they also have teams who rove.
Okay.
So they also have a farm workers team, and then they match up with, whether it's housing authorities, Church at the Park organization. We've got probably 8 different organizations, Northwest Human Services, et cetera, that have outreach staff, and then they schedule their time where they go as teams, and they'll be out toward Fall City one day, and they'll be in
Right,
Woodburn
right.
another day, and they'll be, right. Yeah, so building the relationships all over as a network.
That's why the intent is to try to grow our own navigator here in town,
Right.
so that we don't have to rely on that, and that person or persons can deal with other communities and support them.
Yeah, definitely. Locally grown is important.
I'll get that number and add it, because I have the number for Arches, of course, on, the resource list. So, okay, great, thank you.
You bet. So looking at building on those existing services is another key point. So as we learn of other services, we've got some master list here. I've got it all, a big spreadsheet on my computer that shows every place that we know that is a shelter, a transitional housing, does rapid rehousing, does permanent housing, et cetera, right? And last year, just learned about River of Life. Why didn't I know about River of Life houses, right? So as we continue to learn about them and build on and support them to expand their capacity, one of the things we're looking at is case management. It is the number one thing, outreach and case management, that will move people into shelter. It's one thing to try to navigate that all by yourself, but the housing navigators, case managers, whatever the term you want to call them. So building on that and building the capacity of those folks is one of the things we do as an alliance. Joint trainings, all that sort of thing. So plan through 1 to 5, focusing our resources, really having the dialogue, building the consensus, and helping people who already do the work do it better and to bring more resources. That's what we're about. Okay. I'm not going to run through our accomplishments, but they're in your packet. We did a budget message of our own, and we're kind of impressed with the things that had gone on over the short year and a half that we've been in the Alliance. In addition to the $3.7 million for youth, we also worked together with 10 agencies came together, and we got $5.5 million for homeless interventions. In the Polk County area, Sable House was an example. There's also Family Promise that works in rapid rehousing in the Polk County area. So more and more bringing more dollars in is great, but also leveraging what's here right now.
Can I ask another question? Sorry. With the 3.7 million and the 5.5 million, how many people have been helped with that?
We just got the 3.7.
3.7 hasn't.
Oh, it hasn't been
invested yet.
distributed
Right.
yet,
It
okay.
Just hit the ground. But the 5.5 million has been in place for 8 months now, and it will go through the summer, or into the summer. And we have about, here's where I don't have the independent counts, because there's actually 24 different programs funded in 10 different agencies through these dollars. But it's close to, it's more than 10,000 service types. This isn't going to give you the data you want,
Right.
but I will follow up to give
Okay.
you better
Yeah,
data.
I'm curious if the 5.5 is what we're working with right now, how many people that's touched?
Yeah, you bet.
I have two questions too. When you follow up, can you follow up with us on what the Mid-Willamette Valley Homeless Alliance definition of homelessness is? I would like to know exactly what that is, and because
Right.
it's hard for me to visualize it, and I think that would help. And then two, how many people what percentage of the people that you've served are no longer homeless?
Okay.
Do we have a number of people we've helped?
When we look at that, the alliance is everybody who's working on the issue, right? So I can give you data from people who have move-in dates over time, that sort of thing. Yeah.
It'd just be nice to know, if 500 people were homeless at the start of this program, how many are homeless now? How many have we, how many, where can we see the proof in the pudding on how this money is actually helping people?
Yeah, and we call it inflow, outflow. So as more people are becoming homeless, are we able to keep up? That's one thing. And one of the things that we participate in now is called Built for Zero. And across the nation, there's 85, 86 communities that are all working on this systems improvement model to bring down to virtual zero either the number of chronically homeless in their community or veterans. Those are the two populations that are prioritized. And we have reduced by, I want to say about 30%, the number of veterans who are homeless over time. The count at last month was 84 homeless veterans still. But when we look at pulling people together in case conferencing, doing whatever it takes to bring that number down, that's the approach now, where it used to be that agencies would say, well, my client walked in my door, I'm going to work with this client because they showed up, and here we are. And that's good. They need housing, I'm going to get them housing. How can you argue, right? But when you do an assessment and you say, here's the priorities of people who have been either disabled, chronically homeless over time, they are the hardest to house. And if nobody's working with them because they can't make their way to an agency, right? They've got so many barriers in their life. Well, now our system says, we're working off our by name list of these hardest to house people. And not that we want you to turn anybody away from your agency, but if we could all work together to house the people off of this list, then we are working as a community for our people, not as separate agencies and organizations for their clients.
Go ahead, Counselor.
I think it's important too to remember this is an alliance, so there are very many partners working on this problem. What my focus is what are we doing in Independence? How are things changing in Independence as a result of of their work? I mean, the work that Janet, and Carla, and the new person, I'm sorry,
Lisa.
the name slipped my mind, that they do to help support that. They get the money, they find the sources of the money, they help with their institutional knowledge and their connections and their networking, but we really have to measure how things improve here locally. And that's what we're trying to focus on. Not just Independence, but I'm involved in Independence, Monmouth, and then Polk County. So we're going to be able to see change here. I don't think you're going to be able to itemize what every supporting organization has been able to do as a result of this funding. We're going to have an aggregate number. We're going to have some kind of aggregate, sense of what's going on here, but we need to stay local.
So Jan, let me ask you to put your crystal ball on for a second and look out a year or two when you come back to talk to us again. And what kinds of things should we be thinking might happen or possibly happen in our Polk County rural community? I'm not thinking so much of West Salem. They're wired a little differently, but us more rurally. What kind of things would you probably be talking about, where the successes might be, and how this is moving forward? Because as you and I talked before the meeting began, we're starting to see, homeless folks on the street. We're starting to see, people here in town that are obviously homeless, and then there are the others that are invisible or semi-invisible that are in some of the statistics. So I'd kind of like to hear a little bit of what you think might happen, what could be possible, to kind of taking it from the administrative kind of to something that people are watching tonight go, that seems to make sense, that might work. Is that a reasonable question?
There are a lot of things on a menu, right, that we know are proven. They're great strategies. The question will be, what is the desire and the will of the local community, right? But in saying that, example for youth, young people, right? There is a relatively new movement called host homes. So it's a more formal mechanism of couch surfing, if you will, right? But what happens is if you've got a teenager and they say, hey, mom or dad, so-and-so, they don't have a place to live. Can they stay with us for a while? Well, it seems like a good kid. Okay, let's try that. Can you take them to the doctor? Can you sign a permission slip for them? No, none of those things, right? So helping people with a more formal structure of what does it mean to be a host home, and then what are the support mechanisms that will help you do that when you don't have a legal authority, right? And this is coming actually out of the state. They've got a new model, and the legislature is funding host home pilot programs. So we're excited to see how that can work, because it's a blend of resources that come from outside the community to support the community doing for each other. Right? Obviously, there's needs to be structures. There need to be buildings, whether it's shelters for young people, domestic violence. Okay? There needs to be immediate response. Okay? How that happens and how you put together programming, West Valley Housing Authority, looking at what those models might be for them to build long-term additional pieces, and what are the outside funding sources that can make things happen. There's also the concept that just because Arches is in Salem, and I'll use them as an example, they serve the entire county. Mm-hmm. And I just encourage you to make them do that. Right? That if they need other buildings, they need other things to put a footprint that benefits the community that you're concerned about, have the dialogue. You've already got your warming centers as far as churches stepping up. What else could be possible with that? With the micro shelter visits that went to Church at the Park, is that an answer that works in the City of Independence? Putting up micro shelters that are managed so that people make commitments to work their way to stability, and they're given the opportunity to do that with both shelter and case management. Right? So these possibilities, I could go on, right. More and more possibilities. But there's resources, there's models, there's ways to make it happen.
Well, it's obviously evolving. Please.
One more question.
Excuse me.
You said the City of Independence is a voting member.
Mm-hmm.
So how does that work? Is that like you would bring something before the whole city council, or is there one
No, I
person?
vote for
Oh, only you vote for independence?
Yeah,
Oh,
she's our representative.
okay.
So when we look at what we're voting on, we adopt the voting members adopt the strategic plan, for example, right? They also are saying, yes, we should apply for these funds, or we should have an MOU between us and the Chemeketa Community College, and et cetera, et cetera. So they're looking at it from a systemic standpoint to build a fertile ground that makes things work locally. And I couldn't commend Councilor Corr more than, working it locally is now what it takes.
So
I would like to thank you too for doing this, Councilor Corr, and thank you for this presentation. I hope I didn't come off rude by asking all the questions. I just am trying to just clarify what it means to be homeless, because I know cities like Portland and Seattle have thrown millions and millions of dollars every year into stopping homelessness, and there's never been a reduction in it. And I hope that when we, vote on issues and we look at independence, we're actually voting on trying to stop this problem, because it seems like the homeless situation is becoming a greater issue in our community than ever.
We have
And
an
so-
opportunity to get ahead of it here because we're a small community with a small population. So that's why we're trying to get out in front of it as quickly as possible.
And I like that we're trying to serve independence based on independence values and not bringing in the methods that Portland and Seattle and Salem have obviously not been working.
Thank you for taking the time to visit with us. I'm sure we'll see you again. And I must tell you, it is very gratifying, having been part of the Council of Governments that, helped, along with Mayor Clark out of Kaiser, that helped kick some of this on. And I'm excited to where it is. And I think for anybody watching and listening tonight, this is a complicated issue. It's not an easy fix. But the fact that folks we're working at it. We collectively in the region, people are working on it, and we'll have more conversations about homelessness in this council in coming months. And so, I look forward to seeing you again, Jan. Thank you for all your work.
Thank you all.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to continue moving forward. I have just a couple of things under my report for this evening before I get to Mr. Pessimir. Been involved with some meetings with Business Oregon as we look to try to help them understand more about independence and what some of the business prospects that might be interested in our community. I've also spent with Mr. Pessimir's exiting. I've been spending actually some considerable time visiting with senior staff, with other government folks around the region, Council of Governments, League of Oregon Cities, as we talk about city manager vacancies and the kinds of things that are related to that. So that's what things have been going on the last couple of weeks. With that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Pessimir for his city manager report. Hello.
Well, thank you, Mayor and Council. So I just want to kind of give some previews of some things that are going to kind of be coming up, just so you guys have an introduction to some things. So first thing I'm going to talk about is something that's just really high level. We're just starting to explore this concept. It's something that we've been talking about for a long period of time, but the timing just hasn't been there, just mostly for financial reasons. But I wanted to just let you know that I've asked Sean and Fred to explore what's called a vertical housing overlay zone for the downtown area. Really what a vertical housing zone is to incentivize multi-story structures. So typically, well, by definition of the state, they have to be a commercial or office on the ground floor, and then with housing above. The benefits to the city are you get additional residential units close proximity to downtown that can support residents living and also the local businesses. It allows for the creation and incentivizes affordable housing units. And it incentivizes improvements to existing buildings with residential over commercial, like the Sperling building and other buildings that just simply have the opportunity to have residential there, but just haven't taken it over a long period of time. The benefits to the developer are for each floor, they get housing, they get a 20% reduction in their property taxes over a 10-year period. And then if they do add a affordable housing component, then they actually get a additional property tax reduction for the value of the land underneath the building. I think a couple of reasons that we're kind of talking about this now is because when we were looking at the Independence Landing project, which includes the hotel, the apartments, Osprey Point, the Elks, and those lots back there, it was clear that the Urban Renewal Agency needed to have those projects come in, increase the value, property tax value, so that the Urban Renewal Agency could collect enough money to pay off the debt that it had taken out. Even without the apartments this year, look, we're just about that point where the Urban Renewal Agency could be breaking even. They're going to be pulling in as much money as our debt for those projects in the Urban Renewal Agency. With the apartments and Osprey Point coming online, the Urban Renewal Agency is going to collect more than they need for the debt. So this actually makes a good time for this concept to be kind of considered, mostly because it is Urban Renewal Agency. It won't affect other taxing districts. It'll just impact the urban renewal agency and the amount that they're collecting. But it'll still make sure that their urban renewal agency is collecting more than what is out there for the current debt. I guess I would, move into this cautiously. I would recommend that we actually have an outside agency come in and do a financial analysis to see exactly what the pros and cons are to doing this, what it provides for business support, what it provides for incentives, and exactly how all this works out. But I definitely think it's something that we should take a look at. One thing that won't change is anything in Independence Landing, all that will still need to remain outside of this zone. So the hotel, the apartments, all that will need to stay out, otherwise urban renewal agency would be going backwards, and that would not be the goal of this. This would simply be to move forward. So I have a couple of questions already.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
So this proposal is to increase the urban renewal tax on downtown businesses so that
No.
we can
No.
do this?
No, not at all.
No.
So, but what did you just say by we're not going to use the Osprey and hotel area to collect this revenue?
They wouldn't be in the vertical housing zone.
Okay. So the city of Independence would not be paying for this infrastructure?
Not at all.
Okay.
You're not suggesting that we build vertical housing, you're suggesting that we take advantage of the upstairs of buildings that are already in existence, right?
Existing or new buildings, yes.
Okay.
And this is a state program that was created a number of years ago.
Okay.
Originally, the state, you had to apply to the state to do it. They gave that back to the local control probably 5 or 6 years ago. And it's really just an incentive program to, encourage, people to go higher and to also to infill those existing buildings and also to support affordable housing, so.
You mentioned an additional tax break if there's an affordable housing component to this?
Yes.
What's the definition of an affordable housing component?
I have to look at it. It has a state definition. I don't know off the top of my head.
I mean, is it very subjective, or is there some kind of, I don't necessarily need the number, but is there some kind of defined number that
There is.
falls within? Okay, okay.
So Sean and Fred will be bringing more details for conversation in the future. Is that
Yeah,
correct?
again, this is really just a high level, but I didn't want you to get surprised when, someone comes and says, oh, where did this come from? It came from a long, many-year conversation about why we shouldn't do it now, And then we're at the point where we should at least look at it. It might not be the right time now, again, but at least we're at that point where it would make sense just to have a conversation about it and see if it works. I'm not suggesting that we do this for sure. I'm just saying that it's probably a good time to actually take a look and see what the pros and cons are to it. Another project that we really haven't talked much about, but it's really an important project to pursue in the future, is the Chestnut Street Bridge. I don't know if everybody knows where the Chestnut Street Bridge is or is going to be, but if you drive down 7th Street, you will see Chestnut Street, which goes to the west, and as you see as development come in, that road continues to get built. That is a collector road, and that road is eventually going to connect up to 16th Street and also have connection to 13th Street. And as we went through both the 2040 vision plan as well as the transportation system plan, it became really obvious that, we have to solve the Monmouth Street problem. We have to solve the 7th Street intersection and all the intersections that are continuing to be an issue. F Street Bridge will help a little bit, but this project actually will help a lot, because then it gives another way for people to get out to the south and go west and get out. Obviously, we're still have another arterial further south than that, but that's project's a long ways out just because of the way the development's happening and the cost of that project. So it's really important to continue to figure out ways to fund that. We did go after a congressionally directed spending proposal for that. That didn't work out, but that was just more of us trying to figure out how well this project would do. It did really well because everybody understands the importance of it. But as the infrastructure bill and other opportunities come up, this is something that, the developers are intentionally avoiding because of the costs. It's a couple $1 million. It's really similar to F Street Bridge. because it crosses Ash Creek just upstream from that. So a couple $1 million for the bridge, and then you have to do some improvements at least on 13th Street in order to make sure that people can get in and out. But this is a really important project that was actually studied about 6 or 7 years ago. They did a partial study to figure out what the issues were and costs and everything. Kind of got shelved, hasn't been talked about a whole lot. It was in the transportation system plan, but as we've talked about, what can really make a difference, especially on Monmouth Street, this is it. This is the project that can actually have a significant impact and isn't overly expensive, but at the same time is expensive enough that it is something that's going to have to be worked on in order to make it happen. I just want to give you a quick update. I am setting up meetings with on the youth activities with the YMCA and CYS. I'm also working on setting up meetings and have a couple meetings actually set up for the Resident Support Navigator and the Monmouth Independent Support Network. That is really kind of what I would call you have requests for proposals, and then before that, a lot of times you do what's called a request for information. It's really just to sit down and say, okay, well, here's an idea. How would we actually make this work? What benefits would different organizations provide? And really just kind of more thinking outside the box and trying to figure out how to put something together that actually might make sense. So we're just at the early stages of this, but before I leave, I want to make sure that we get that started so that we can continue that work down the road. Speaking of leaving, as everybody knows, and maybe the public doesn't know, but I have given my notice of resignation. So my last day will be in the office will be the 24th of November, and the 28th will be my last day with the city. So
Can we
there's
deny
a couple
that?
of agenda items on that tonight. So
Can we deny that? So you have to stay?
I second that.
Sorry.
I tried,
You can
folks.
commute back and forth to Tennessee on Friday. It'll work.
yes, I would love to be able to do that. Yes.
I'm sure your wife will appreciate it.
Yeah, that's it. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Okay, we have a human resources presentation by Amanda Christensen. Good evening. Nice to see you.
Okay, so I'm Amanda Christensen. I'm the HR manager here with the city. I've been here about 13 years and been doing HR for 10. So I'm going to go through our human resource, some of the activities I do throughout my day and throughout weeks I've been here. Definition of human resources. HR is defined as a division of business that is charged with finding, screening, recruiting, and training job applicants, as well as administrating employee benefit programs. This covers a large portion of my job, but there is a lot more that I do. That includes recruiting, onboarding, benefits administration, claims management, policy implementation, employment relations, web page design, and employee portals. We'll go over all these today. Recruitment. Obviously, it starts when we have an opening, and this could be from a vacant position or from one that we've created within the organization. I go and talk with our managers or supervisors on what we need for that position to make sure we're advertising it correctly. After that, we do a compensation study, comparing with all other local cities that are our size to make sure we're within the same regulations and scope that they are and have the similar wages. After that, I create a flyer like the one you guys are seeing. On that flyer, you're going to see things like our job description, benefits, salary, and then our ideal candidate, and obviously the time they need to have those applications in by. It just gives kind of an overview of the position. We then do advertising. Currently, I'm using Facebook, city web pages, LOC, and then job-specific pages. So let's say for the museum, we use the museum pages to advertise the positions. And currently, we're working on other avenues because it's kind of hard to find people who want a job right now. Once we hire, We move on to onboarding. For onboarding, it is to make sure that the new employees has all the tools they need to do their job and set them up for success. So, next. There you go. This includes introduction to other staff members, training appropriate for their position, reviewing personnel manual, going over all of the benefits options that they have, and processing hiring paperwork like your I-9 and W-4s. For benefit administration, I coordinate for all of our employees our open enrollment process. That takes about a month to do between our Teamsters coverage and our CIS coverage. The employees can that's our health coverage, which is for medical, dental, and vision. We also offer life insurance, long-term disability, and then employees can also opt into programs for 457 plans for retirement, along with supplemental insurance for short-term disability, accident, critical illness, that kind of thing for other options. Next on my list is claim management. So for claim management, there's two portions. There's property liability coverage, and then there's workers' comp. For property liability, this can include citizens or employees, depending on the situation. When we damage somebody's property, or they damage our property, obviously liability, and or when a citizen feels that we are at fault for damaging something. I work with CIS to process all of these claims. They are an amazing company to work with, and that's City County Insurance Services. For workers' comp, we recently moved over to SAFE, which has also been a great move. They work with us. All of our workers' comp claims run through my office to make sure that the employees see if they were like a near miss or if they were they required treatment. That way we can see if they need to go and have a workers' comp claim or if we just need to reevaluate what was going on. All of our incidences that are then sorted and sent to our safety committee so that we can review if we need to do an upgrade to the different systems that they're working on, or if their tools are not working, that kind of thing. Employee relations. I answer lots of questions from employees and managers in regards to a variety of human resource questions. I work to coordinate the performance management program and related activities. Our performance management program is a coaching program, and it's a process that engages the employee and supervisors to have conversations more than just having a number system at the end of the year. So we try to have our employees engage in conversations versus just a number system. I work with management to resolve employee grievances. That can include employee coaching and or termination. I ensure that both sides are being heard and help the manager to work through the situation. Contract negotiations. I'm on the team that negotiates with the unions. We have 2 unions within our city. I help them also with clarifications of the contract throughout the year to make sure that we're all on the same page. Employee recognition is another portion that is the fun part of my job too. We do longevities for employees, look at an award for 15 to 5, 10, 15 years. And then we also have an annual picnic and a holiday party to celebrate our time and to thank our employees for all they do. Policy implementation. This has been a large part of my job this last year, especially with COVID. We have had multiple policies and implementations and updates, so those have been fun. The other thing I also am constantly looking at is our personnel manual. Our personnel manual is constantly evolving because of all of the different laws and changes that we have to look at from federal to state levels. The HR webpage is a landing page for job seekers and employees. It covers it has links to open positions, salary schedules, our employment manual, and a link to our employee portal, which is a portal that all of our employees can have access to documents and brochures and flyers and such for information from benefits to accident reporting. So each employee has access to this portal that gives them one-stop shop for all their information. So this is a sample of what I do for HR here. And do you have any questions?
Questions for the speaker?
Good presentation.
Thank you.
Clearly
You are
efficiency
thoroughly-
driven,
There you
so.
Thorough and organized.
That's great. Okay, we're going to continue moving forward. Mr. Pessmer, your name is next to this. Did you want to speak to this, and I'll back clean up?
Yeah, this is one of those items that really does have a dual role with staff and with council. Really, this is council's decision. And so what I'm trying to do tonight is really just move this process forward more quickly. Certainly, if we don't take action on this tonight, that's perfectly fine and understandable. But at the same time, if you do, I think you're probably going to save a month to a month and a half in the selection process. So I really just brought this forward as a time-saving item, and largely because really we were able to just use what was done in 2018 and bring it forward, make some changes. But I would highly recommend that council really consider hiring a recruiting firm for your next city manager selection process. Internal selection processes tend to be clunky. You tend not to have the reach to get the best stable of candidates to apply, and then it was really difficult when you're working with a body of 7 people to actually, not make trip up along the way and make prospective candidates kind of look a different direction. So these typically are not inexpensive. As I've said, it's $20,000 to $25,000 is typically. Largely, this would be offset for not paying my salary during that period of time. The good thing about these selection is they usually come with a 2-year warranty. So if the city manager leaves within the 2 year, they will do another selection for you free of charge. So really, you guys have had a chance to look through this RFP. The timelines are pretty tight. I made them pretty tight intentionally. They were pretty tight last time. So one of the things you may want to consider is having the mayor appoint a couple of counselors to actually do some of the review work and some of the pre-work before it comes back to all of council, because if you're limited to just doing some of this work at council meetings, then it will definitely slow down the process from what I've outlined here. So with that, I am kind of leaving this in your hands to decide how you want to move it forward, but I highly recommend that you do some sort of process like this to move forward.
So batting cleanup here, we've talked about this and have done more than a few city manager hires in my time, and this is a request for proposal, and it's pretty straightforward. I think it's a good thing to do, and the sooner we can get this out on the street, the better. And I think it's pretty straightforward. Any questions?
Yeah, just one thing I'll mention, because it has come up, is, couldn't we just go back to the same firm that you used last time? I suppose technically you could, but I know that the person that was with the firm has moved on to a different firm, so I actually really don't know what they would have for a person. I think it would probably be someone from outside the area or outside the state at this point.
Okay. This is an action item.
I move to authorize city staff to issue the request for proposals for city manager recruiting firms as submitted.
I second that.
I have a motion and a second by
Either one.
Counselor Job or Counselor Takis.
Doesn't matter.
Okay, discussion. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And opposed. Motion carries. Thank you very much. Next item is that I appreciate Karen putting this together. And once Tom leaves, we have to have an interim city manager to handle things. And after consultation with a number of both internal and external folks from throughout the region, I'm recommending that we appoint Bob Mason as our interim city manager, as outlined in the memo, with a 5% out-of-class pay increase. And he's indicated he's willing to do this. And those who I've spoken to throughout the region think that this is a good choice.
I have a question.
Please do.
Does the Independence Police Department have the manpower resources to allow you to take on this position? Because at last meeting that we had, I thought we were 2 officers out. Do you have the manpower to do this?
Short answer would be yes, we can do it. We are still 2 officers down. However, the management team is not nearly as affected by that as the patrol staff. Our sergeants and myself have covered occasionally, but mostly we're still doing our job that we're tasked to do and not cover the road, which is where the vacancies are. So the road coverage is really down a little bit more, but the management side of the organization is still strong.
And then my other question is how much more time do you think you'll be working doing this job than your normal job?
That's a great question. My wife asked the same one. It's really hard to say. My guess is 3 additional days a month if I really manage my time well at the police department with my tasks. And, there are 3 sergeants at the police department. We don't have any other structure between myself and them, and they all are very capable of doing tasks that are my level and do often. We share those tasks all the time. And 2 of the 3, one was off sick, but 2 of the 3 have already come to me and said, if this creates extra work, don't worry, we're going to be here for you. We know it's a short duration of time. I have 0 interest in pursuing a career as a city manager, so it's just keep the lights on, keep the bills paid, and keep us on a good path and find a really good city manager recruit to bring in is kind of the goal.
And one more,
We
Tom, what is the reason behind the 5% pay? Is that enough to cover what he's doing, or is that just the standard?
It's the standard, and it's pretty much, when we have people who are working out of class, we give them a 5% pay. I've seen this before, and I've been offered a lot more than that sometimes when I've been working out of class, but I think it sends a bad example through the program when, you have someone else in the organization that you have doing tasks that are outside of the organization because someone's left or something else. So it's really a standard,
Okay.
And I think it sets a good tone for moving forward. He offered to do it for nothing, but I don't think that's fair to him either. So
I'm going to just offer an additional comment. While we are very sad that Tom is leaving us, staff, folks internal and external and other governments, we are positioned very, very well. We've got a great team internally. We're able to do the kinds of things that we need to do. We've got an excellent administrator available to us, and there are folks interested in our community. I've already received some phone calls, and so I think this is a good move for us. It allows us to continue moving forward, because if we have to try to do something with the interim, by the way, there are 8 vacancies for city managers in Marion, Polk, and Yamhill County, and so there's a dearth, of interims that would do the kind of job that Independence deserves. And so, anyway, that's why I made the recommendation. If somebody would like to suggest action?
Maybe we should make it so that if you're interim city manager for more than 6 months, you could renegotiate this.
It'll not be very much longer than 6.
Yeah, I'd vote for that. So I'll move to appoint Robert Mason as interim city manager effective 11/24/2021, and to provide him a 5% out-of-class pay increase during the period of his interim manager.
Thank you.
Second.
I have a motion, second. Discussion. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And opposed. Motion carries. Thank you. There's a little, now I can tell, keep calling you chief. We had a police chief years ago who had to fill in when Chief Wells is. And people asked, how did you guys move things so positively and quickly through council meetings? And they goes, hey, city manager carries heat.
Well, I'm going to say I hope the city manager doesn't carry.
Yeah, I said that with humor. Okay, announcements anybody needs to make,
I have a question.
please.
Do we have an update on the design and development of the Independent Sports Park?
The what?
The Independent Sports Park.
Yeah, so let me check with Sean. I talked to him last week, and I think we were just ready to release that. I don't think he has, but it's ready, pretty much ready to go. So we'll get that out here next.
Couple days?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Anything else? Somebody send everybody to.
Well, no, actually,
you got something?
of course I have something.
Okay.
So no, just a couple of things kind of for our community. We all know that we have Veterans Day on the 11th, and I just hope that folks in the community will take a moment to thank a vet. If you know a Vietnam vet, please be sure to welcome them home, belatedly, but necessarily. And from a personal standpoint, to all the Marines out there, I want to wish you a very happy 246th year birthday occurring tomorrow. Founded at Tully's Tavern, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania in 1775, before we were even a nation. So to them I say a semper fi and give a hearty hoorah. That's it for me.
And that's your educational moment for this afternoon, courtesy
more
of
you
Kathy
know.
Martin Willis. Since you were talking, did you want to say anything else about, adjourn?
Like what? Oh, let's move to adjourn. Now that we've had our educational moment.
There we go, all in favor. Thank you.
Aye.
Have a pleasant
I
evening.
didn't want to steal all the glory.
I was trying to be humorous there with you. Thank you.